All right, so today we're in Parque Carolina. This is one of the large parks in central North Quito, and it's one of the safer parks. Here with my family. It's a good place to bring kids, spend the day. It's not a good place to hang out at night. And what I wanted to talk about today is safety when traveling. Really, I'm going to tell some stories about the times that I didn't follow my own advice and made some big mistakes and what sort of consequences I paid. So you guys can learn from my mistakes and not have bad things happen to you while you're traveling. My first story, the first time I got robbed while traveling, it was in Spain many years ago. I was traveling with my girlfriend at the time. 7 o'clock in the morning, we decided to go out for a walk and get breakfast. And I started putting my wallet in my back pocket. And she said to me, "Don't do that. Put it in your front pocket. It's safer." And I looked at her and said, it's 7 o'clock in the morning on a weekday. This is a safe area. Don't worry about it. I don't know what instinct was going off in her at the time that gave me that advice, but I should have listened. Not 5 minutes into our walk, I got bumped. I look over and I see this really old man, and I think, oh, it's just an old man that's not watching where he's going. And a half second later, I notice, man, he's walking really fast for an old man. I reach for my wallet, it's gone. I got pickpocketed in Spain because I didn't follow the number one rule when traveling about where to put your wallet, and that is you don't put it in your back pocket. You're inviting theft when you put your wallet in your back pocket. It's very visible and it's easy to bump you and just take it. You put it in your front pocket, it's a whole lot harder to get your wallet. So rule number one, put your wallet in your front pocket when you're traveling. Or better yet, have a decoy wallet. You might have a wallet that's got fake cards and just some garbage in it that's visible for people to take, and have your real wallet hidden. Second time that I got in a lot of trouble while traveling. This was in Pasto Colombia. It's a border town. It's known to be a pretty dangerous town. And I'd been on a bus for 23 hours. I was tired to the point where my judgment wasn't very good, and hungry, kind of feeling like I needed a drink. Got off the bus, found a hotel not far from the bus station that fortunately was a very secure hotel, and that's going to be an important factor later in the story. What happened next was I went around looking for a place where I could just get a drink to relax. And the first bar I walked into was a brothel. So I walked back out. Look around, duck in another bar, it's a brothel. I walk back out. I look and I look and I look, and I finally see a place that looks like a fancy whiskey joint. It's got a big sign that says Whiskeria, big, very expensive looking door. So I head in, and when I walked in and looked around, I should have walked right back out. That was my big mistake. I walked into this place, there was nobody in there except for the bartender. There was a stage and everything was red. So it obviously wasn't a normal bar. I should have turned around, but because there was no one in there except for the bartender, I thought, okay, well, it's quiet, it'll be safe, I can just get a quick drink and go. Walk up to the bar, ask them what they have. They've got one kind of beer, one kind of rum, and agua dente, which is a local Colombian and Ecuadorian, sort of like a moonshine of rum. It's a very strong local drink. I decided to get a rum and coke. And I go sit, the bartender first, she tells me, I can't remember what it was in Colombian pesos, but I do remember I did the conversion at the time and it was about $16, which is a lot of money for a rum and coke anywhere outside of a bar in Manhattan, right? So it's a lot, but I'm like, I don't even care at this point. I sit down, then I see why it's that price. The bartender saunters over there with 2 glasses and a bottle of rum and a 2-liter of coke. And I realize, since she's brought 2 glasses, she's thinking she's gonna keep me company. I tell her no. Hold on a sec, this guy's being noisy. So I tell her no. I just want to be solo, by myself, and she kind of looks at me like I'm silly, but she leaves me with the closed, the sealed bottle of rum and bottle of coke. So I proceed to pour a drink, and then something really uncomfortable happens. 4 extraordinarily ugly prostitutes walk out and sit on 4 stools very close to me and just stare at me. They're like right across from my table, and they're just looking at me, right? Well, this is super uncomfortable. Second mistake. Should have left right then. Should have gotten out of there. I didn't. So I pour my drink, I drink it, I pour another drink. Couple dudes come in, sit at the table right behind me. To avoid the awkwardness of the 4 prostitutes that are just staring at me, I try to spark up conversation with these guys. And they're Colombian truck drivers. They've probably got some interesting stories. We're talking a little bit. I'm trying to find out their stories of driving on the crazy roads in Colombia. I'm about halfway through my drink, and I've got to go pee. Third mistake. Now, I knew this is the last place in the world I should ever leave my drink. I knew this was a dangerous town and that I was in a dangerous place. I knew I shouldn't leave my drink. Number one rule, you know what, not even in whether you're in Colombia, you could be in Seattle or New York or Los Angeles. Don't leave your drink unattended, ever, right? So, but my judgment was off. I was tired and I just wasn't thinking real straight. The bathroom was like 10 steps away. I'm like, I can just duck in there super quick, go pee, come back before anyone can do anything. Put a napkin over my drink, and I left it. Went to the bathroom, came back real quick. Proceeded to drink my drink. And I'm a couple sips in, and it hits me. All of a sudden, I don't feel like I've had 2 rum and cokes. I feel like I've had 2 bottles of rum. It hit me hard and it hit me fast. And I realized right away what had happened. I'd been drugged. I knew I had to get out of there. So I headed straight for the door. On my way out the door, I checked my pocket, made sure I still had the change from buying the rum and coke. Opening that door was the last thing I remember. I woke up, I guess the next day in bed, completely destroyed. The money in my pocket was gone. So those are the 3 things I did wrong that got me in that situation. The one thing I did right, actually 2 things I did right that saved my ass. One is I was in a very secure hotel. The drug that was used on me was probably scopolamine, also known as devil's breath. It's got a different name in Spanish. What do you call it?
Floripondio?
Floripondio is a plant. I can't remember the slang term for the drug that the gangs use here, but it turns you into basically a zombie.
Dulce sueño?
Anyway, so it turns you into basically a zombie, and you are totally susceptible to suggestion, which means if I hadn't been in a real secure hotel, whoever drugged me and took the money from my pocket probably could have gotten into my hotel with me and cleaned me out of all my stuff. The other thing I did right was I didn't go out with my passport, my wallet, my cell phone, any of that stuff. I left all of that hidden in the hotel. I hid it real well, brought just enough money for what I needed to spend for that evening, and that saved me from getting hit real hard. What I did lose was 3 days. It was 3 days before I could even get myself up and out of that hotel. I mean, I went downstairs and got water the second day. I think the third day I was able to go downstairs and get a little food, but that was about all I could do. That drug wiped me out. Okay, so the third time that I really screwed up was at a little, hotel's not the right word, I guess a little guest house, because in this tiny little town in southern Ecuador on the coast, in a place called Engabao or Puerto Engabao, little surfer spot, there weren't any real hotels. So I was staying in the only accommodation I could find at the time, and it didn't have a good lock on the door. And that was my mistake, staying in a place that did not have a good lock on the door. It was possible to pry the door open and slide the little sliding lock over and get in, and that's exactly what happened in the middle of the night. While I was sleeping, somebody got in there and they stole all of my electronics, phone, computer, cameras, stole all my money. Fortunately, they left my passport and my credit cards, bank cards, but other than that, they pretty much cleaned me out, so it was a very expensive mistake. Now, I don't know that I really had any alternatives in that town. I literally would have had to just stay in a different town if I wanted to stay in a more secure place. But so I mean, those are my 3 stories, my misadventures, where I didn't do the safe thing and I paid a price for it. Not putting my wallet in a very safe place, or not having a decoy wallet. Going out for a drink at a place that I knew was unsafe and not guarding my drink. And staying in a hotel that's not secure. There are certainly more aspects to safety when traveling than just those things, but those are my misadventures. There are some things I do now that I didn't used to when I travel because I've learned. One thing I do, I download an offline version of Google Maps so that, say I'm in a taxi and that taxi is not taking me the route where I want to go, even if I don't have internet access, I can still see where I am on that map and see if the taxi is taking the wrong route. I've also, I think I've only done this once or twice, but if I'm really unsure about a taxi, I'm not afraid to take a photo of that taxi driver or the plate number, or if they have a taxi ID number, so that if something happens, they've seen that I've taken a photo of them. They don't know whether I've got internet service or not, and texted that photo to somebody. So at that moment, it makes you much less of a potential victim. One of the things that here in South America that people are worried about a lot is express kidnapping. That's where you get grabbed. A lot of times it happens in a taxi, and they just take you to an ATM and have you withdraw the money. It's not the most dangerous kind of kidnapping, but it's a real... Hold on, I'm going to stop for a minute while this family walks through the shot. So there's a lot of things you can do to make it less convenient for you to be a target. Most thieves, most criminals, they're looking for targets of convenience, and simply doing something to make yourself the less easy target at the moment is really all you need to do. All that said, I don't want to get people to be afraid to travel. Too many people that I know, they're just too afraid to see the world, and things are never actually as dangerous as people make it out to be on the internet. You look in like a Reddit group talking about the city of Lima, which I just came back from, and I found it to be an incredibly safe city. Or here, like Quito, Ecuador, people always talk about how dangerous the city is. You'll get robbed in the parks. I'm in this park, kids out everywhere, wonderful, beautiful place. It's not dangerous. A lot of the time I find that people will talk about how dangerous a place is when they're coming from an inner city in the United States that's 3 or 4 times more dangerous when it comes to violent crime than these other countries. Okay, let's see if I can finish up this video without getting interrupted again. We had to bail out of the park because right around lunchtime the vendors really get a little aggressive there. We had 3 or 4 different vendors kind of around us that were yelling over and over again about whatever it was they were selling, and there was no way to record a video with them circling us like that. So don't be afraid to travel is my point. When you look online, say I'm looking at Lima, Peru on Reddit and asking questions about staying there, you get all kinds of fear-mongering responses. People pretend like the world is a lot more dangerous than it is. It's not that you don't need to take precautions and be safe, but the reality is, especially for violent crime, most of the places that you're going to travel in the world are no worse, and actually probably a lot better than cities in the US. It just feels a little different when you're in an unknown place, and you do have to take precautions against theft. As a tourist, you stand out, and you do need to take a couple precautions to make yourself a little bit less of a target. But it's not that difficult. And there's one other thing, and this is it's hard to articulate, it's hard to explain, but there's a few times in my travels when I've noticed, okay, I've attracted some unwanted attention. Good example of this, I was in San Lorenzo, Ecuador, near the Colombian border, in a pretty dangerous town. And I had my backpack. I was obviously a backpacker tourist, and I noticed I was getting followed. And there's a couple different things you can do at that point. You can try to duck into some business where there's other people around, but then you're stuck in there, and eventually you got to come out. Or you can just try to pick up your pace and get where you're going quickly. Yeah, you can panic. Or you can have, this is where it's hard to explain, you can have this small change in your demeanor that exudes confidence. It's kind of like the little dog in a dog park that can stand up to a pit bull and not get in a fight, but just have a certain presence that says, you don't want to mess with me. So in that situation, what I did was I stopped walking. I turned around and I just stared at the guy. I gave him a look like, yeah, you're about to make a mistake. And it's just that confident demeanor that'll, 90% of the time, if somebody's casing you, that'll cause them to question why they picked you. It's just enough to give them pause, and you can turn around and walk away. And while they're second guessing their life choices, you're gone. You're out of the situation. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but I've also been hesitant to, because as you can hear from my stories about what's gone wrong in my travels, the mistakes I've made, and the consequences I've paid, I am not always the safest person. I take risks. A life of adventure is about taking risks, and my attitude is, if you don't go out and take risks, and if you just live a very safe, sheltered life, then you're definitely going to get robbed. You robbed yourself. You robbed yourself of the best experiences in life. And when you look back on your life, you're going to be like, I never really lived. I was too scared to travel and go out and have adventures. So don't be that person. Don't be scared. Go out, have adventures. Understand that every once in a while stuff will go wrong. It's part of the story. It's part of the adventure. That's life. Go get pickpocketed in Spain and deal with the consequences and have a great story to tell afterwards. But make sure it's a decoy wallet. Peace.